Well, good evening. Welcome back to The Last Tackle. Another bumper weekend of rugby league behind us. Another one on the way as we get ever closer to playoffs, grand finals, all of the above. Alongside me in the studio, Kevin Brown and Andrew Henderson. And gents, there is really only one place to start this week. Kev, Hull KR, 6 points clear at the top of the Betfred Super League. Surely they're not getting caught from here.
No, they're not getting caught. And you've got to say they have been by far the best team consistently over the course so far. They won the game 10-6, but I thought they were much better than a 4 or a 6 point gap. I thought it should have been probably 20. I thought Wigan were in third gear, but that's probably how good Wigan are. Defensively, even when they're off with the ball, they make you really work hard. But Hull KR, yeah, sensational. They're the team to catch. And I think probably the confidence that they get from going away to Wigan, beating Wigan, and probably putting that nail in the coffin in the league leaders' hopes is a massive boost for them.
Yeah, it's a good point about the kind of nature of that win, Hendo, because I think, we can, without wanting to predict what happens between now and the end of the season, we can sit here and say there's a very good chance that that was a precursor to a grand final. Obviously, it was last season's grand final, and I think Hull KR kind of grinding a close game, a tight game out, but keeping them at arm's length really for that 80 minutes will do them the world of good in almost convincing themselves they can do it in the grand final.
Yeah, I agree, Lewis. I think that was the question mark, wasn't it, over Hull Kingston Rovers going into this fixture. Can they get almost that monkey off the back against Wigan in what was built up to be the top two going at it, almost challenging each other there for that league leaders shield, and I admire Hull Kingston Rovers at the moment because they have risen for me. They've grown over the last few seasons and they've rose now to that challenge. They've won the Wembley Cup final. They've then responded well off the back of that, continued to improve performance. They had a little bit of a mini blip there for a couple of weeks, but then they've got back on the horse, faced with the next big challenge in Wigan away, and like you said, they rose to that. And I agree with Kevin. I thought they were more dominant in that game than probably the scoreline suggests. I thought they dominated field position and possession. That might be some area they might look and go, how did we not, score more points? And that's where you have to credit Wigan and their resilience. Some of that scramble defence from Wigan was outstanding, and the manner that they remained in the fight up until, with I think the late Adam Kieran try, kept them in the contest. Was credit to Wigan, because I agree with Kevin, they weren't at their best on that night, but they probably weren't allowed to be at their best because of the nature in which Hull Kingston Rovers played. So I'm an admirer of Hull Kingston Rovers at the moment and the way they're going about their business, and I think now they've certainly got one hand on the lead leaders shield, that's for sure.
I suppose the caveat from a Wigan perspective, Kev, is players still coming back into the side, players still missing from the side. They've not had a consistent spine for a while. There are obviously some big game names missing. The indications that they will be back in time for knockout games and what might follow. So I still think it's very bold of us to sit here and say that I would win the grand final against Wigan, but it feels like a big step in that direction if I was a KR fan.
Oh, 100%. And let's not forget Tyrone May's a big part of Hull KR's attack as well. So they've got players missing too. So they will be better, come the big games. But yeah, you're referring to Bevan French and Luke Thompson. Bevan goes in that team, even if Bevan French doesn't play magnificently well. His teammates around him are all more confident that he's in there. The crowd are more expectant to that Wigan side. So I don't think it's just them two though, Lewis. I think from what we've seen of Saints this week, what we see of Leeds and Leigh, the battle that is hardening up 6th place, I honestly believe we've got the best playoff series in front of us that we've ever had.
Yeah, we'll come on to that because it does feel like the top 6 collectively finding form, finding some return to form in some cases, all at the same time. Just one last point on Hull KR, Hendo, and this almost seems like a daft thing to say out loud for a team that have won the Betfred Challenge Cup. I think we've just given them the league leaders shield in the studio, haven't we? But it almost feels like now if they don't win the treble, they're going to look back on this season with like a hint of disappointment, which is crazy for a season that's going to produce 2 trophies.
Yeah, but I think that's the standards now and the expectation that's been set at that club. I think, like I said here, they've returned to Super League a few years back. They've been slowly developing that team, progressing the team. You know, they've then started getting themselves up at the top end of the table and in the mixer for winning trophies. They've now gone on and achieved by winning a major trophy and potentially now 2 major trophies in one season. And that's where they're at. That's the yardstick for them. You know, they will be disappointed if they don't win the treble. And the reason being because they're in a position to do so.
I don't think before the season they'd have said,
we're going to
win the treble. 100%. And if we don't, it'll be a disappointment. But I get what you're both saying. If they don't, from where they are now, with almost 2 in the bag, and the way that they've been so dominant, the way that the fans have just kept turning up, they're the favourites for it.
Well,
no one else can do it. But
that's why I say it feels like a stupid question to ask.
Yeah.
Because
I think initially after the grand final, if they don't make it, or if they don't make the grand final, I think they'll be disappointed. But when they reflect, regardless how it ends now, if they do
it's as good an opportunity as any, isn't it, for them? You know, it really is.
We'll just track back to some of the other games of the weekend and mention how good the top 6 is looking, Kev, as you've alluded to. We're going to start with Thursday night's game with 2 teams that are not in the picture for the top 6. But a game I found very interesting, even if not significant in the playoff picture, Warrington Catalans. How important will it be for Warrington in the kind of bigger picture to be back amongst the wins, having looked a little bit wobbly at times in that game?
Well, very wobbly for probably 36 minutes. I think if they don't score the try before half-time, there was still boos as they were going off. The Warrington fans, were really underwhelmed with that performance. And for whatever reason, there's a few teams struggling at home. Hull FC was struggling. Warrington seemed to be struggling, and the pressure can be put on them. So it was really important, not only that they scored before half-time, but then, Sam got them in at half-time and a talk. I don't think he was too concerned at that moment, and his team went out and got the job done. They're by far anywhere near the best at the moment, though. Catalan were less than resilient mentally. The frailty that they have had defensively opened up again. But they could have won that game. Catalans could have won that game. I think Joe Tompkins and his team will be really disappointed going back over to France thinking that was a chance of really getting our season going under Joel. They were better, but both teams are struggling for form, no doubt.
For me, Hendo, I think there'll be some discourse about this, but Sam Burgess has enough credit in the bank. What he did in that first season, a second place finish, 2 back-to-back cup finals. I mean, so close to winning it that second time around. For a 36-year-old coach to come in and do that, given where Warrington were when he took over, I think buys him time. But I do think this is an important period for them to, even though perhaps they might have written this season off, to finish the season in good shape so that they're not starting a couple of steps back in November when they come back or whatever.
Yeah, well, these next few weeks, it's an opportunity now for Sam to probably make some key decisions on who he is genuinely looking at taking forward into next season. Do I blood some youngsters and look at those different combinations to make some decisions on them? Does he almost show a bit of faith in certain other players that he believes are going to be catalysts for the re-emergence in 2026? So I just think it's a real opportunity for him now at the back end of this season to really sort of have a look at who he wants to keep going forward. But like I said, they'll be pleased with that result on the weekend because, like you said, as Kev said and alluded to, the first half was pretty average. That try by Jake Thewlis on half-time really got them back in the contest.
I don't think I've ever seen a contrasting season for a team where defensively they're so good one year and then defensively, look, they won again, but they conceded over 20 points at home against
a side that is struggling to score points in the Catalan
Dragons. I think that would be Sam's worry, and maybe it's down to a little bit of culture, and it looks like Hendo alluded to it there, that the team is probably looking a little bit more for next year now. Matt Duffy's been pulled out for a couple of weeks. They're clearly trying to get the culture back on track, and if they can get that, Sam's shown with his team that he can get them going, and I think they've probably just missed out on a couple of trophies and probably took their eye off how good they were defensively last year and aimed more at attack.
We'll move on to Saturday afternoon. Leeds absolutely blowing Cass away, Kev. Another torrid afternoon and what's been a pretty torrid season from a Cass perspective, and you just have to wonder from their perspective again. I mean, I said this exact same thing to you this time last week, Hendo. By the time this airs in a couple of hours' time, we might know who the new Castleford coach is, but they just feel like a treading water as a team, as a club at the moment. It feels like a big transitional period for them.
It feels a little bit like an anticlimax when we had this new ownership, and Cass is a club that they demand success, don't they? They always punch above the weight, and when Darryl Powell was there, they were so close to doing something special, and now for the last few years it's just not clicked. When Danny Maguire went in there, everyone expected a real resurgence. That didn't happen, and then Chris Chester's gone in, and that's not happened. And I agree, they just need to get this new coach and get some vibe back at that place, because losing to Leeds, isn't unheard of at Cas, but losing by over 50 points and not putting up much of a fight is unheard of in a Cas shirt.
That's the big thing, isn't it, Hendo? Because you know Cas better than most people do, and exactly as Kev has just said, a defeat to Leeds is one thing, but the manner of it will not have gone down well.
No, 100%. And look, one thing from my experience of Castleford is the fans are extremely supportive. They're very passionate if they see effort and endeavour and a willingness to play for the badge. And that's all they expect. So, yes, there is an element of expectation that they want to be winning trophies. Yep, there is that there. And that's probably come off the back of the era under Darryl Powell, where they just re-emerged out of nowhere, got back to that classy Cas type sort of vibe, and played some outstanding rugby league football, and really achieved some great things under Darryl's tenure. Like you said, they've lost their way over recent years. I think it's been 5 different head coaches at the helm in 5 years. A lot of squad transition in and out, signing different players every year. And I think we touched on this last week, Lewis. They need some stability. They need a clear vision of what they're looking to achieve and a clear plan and how they're going to achieve that. And like I said, the head coach is going to be a pivotal point of that, alongside the director of rugby, Chris Chester. And they've got to get their recruitment right, and they've got to keep players, a group or a core of players, together for a period of time, and then add to it and grow it over the next few years. But the key thing for them is they just need to get back to make sure they're competing in those sort of effort areas and showcasing that effort and that attitude to want to play for Cas and make their fans proud.
From a Leeds perspective, Kevin, I'd be finding it quite hard if I was a Leeds fan to not be getting a little bit carried away at this point, because the results are coming in, they're in excellent form. Brad Arthur's committed to the club. There's something about Leeds from relatively deep in the playoffs, although we'll see how deep they are. We know that they've got a history of doing this from way back in the league, going all the way. I'm not even going to call them dark horses, because they're well in with a chance.
Oh, they're massively in with a chance. They're probably more of a chance now than they ever have been since they won it last. I think, what Brad Arthur's done since he's come in, he's turned the team completely around, but it's been based on effort, been based on defence. But by a byproduct of that, they've got their attack firing as well, because people are in the right positions. I think probably the best signing right now is Jake Connor. Jake Connor is by far, for me, the best player in the competition on the Man of Steel. He's lighting it up every week. And, I heard Ryan Hall say something like, if the voting stopped right now, he expects him to be the Man of Steel. He's been that good. And he expected him to be nowhere near that when he came in. So it shows again how good Brad Arthur's been at not just managing the team, but the individuals as well. And as a collective, I'd be worried about playing Leeds. I think they've got the tools to open you up, and defensively they make you work very, very hard to open them up.
Yeah, I was just going to make that same point there, Kev, about defensively, they can shut you out. They've improved massively in that area. But when you look at the other teams, or the teams around the top, we talk about Bevan French and Jay Field at Wigan. We talk about Mikey Lewis and Arthur Morg and those sort of type of players at Hull Kingston Rovers. Well, Leeds have got the same. Lockie Miller's playing outstanding rugby league football this year. Jay Connor's at his best, like you said. They've got Sam Lasani, who comes off the bench and just causes havoc, gets quick play the balls and tempo. Like you said, Ash Hanley and amongst others. They've got some real genuine strike out there that can cause you problems. But like you said, they're defensively are really, really stern and stubborn and effort-based as well. So they have got the ability to go and achieve something at the back end of this season. No doubt about it in my mind.
Yeah, watch this space, Leeds fans. I think I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see them walking out at Old Trafford. I think another big result in that playoff picture, Hull FC, well, the home form's been through the floor this year, but what result that is against Leigh, and massively significant in terms of the table picture, the top 6 picture, but perhaps even more significant at this time of the season from a Hull FC perspective, Kev, to just put more confidence, more petrol in their tank, and really set things up for a crack at this?
Well, it was almost a must-win, and I worried for them when Will Price went off, a superstar. They brought a debutant on in Lloyd Kemp. He was terrific, and we talk about attacking sides. There's probably no more dangerous side than when Leigh there and Lockie Lamb's got hold of the ball. But the way that Hull defended the way to victory and did it the tough way. They actually scored a try off their own defence at the end. Lewis Martin, he intercepted the ball, picked the scraps, went the length. I just think they've grown, they've gone through adversity. They're probably a little bit behind Leeds because, you know, John's not been there as long as Brad, but they're on that same kind of journey, aren't they? And there was a lot of eyebrows raised when Richie Myler went there, but I think everyone has to say, fair play, you've turned the club round from where they were last year especially to where they are now. I think they make the six, but that game was huge.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You're right, I think, about the journeys in terms of where Leeds are, and even probably more exaggerated version of where Hull are in terms of the journey that they've been on. But there are some quite exciting, not just at Hull FC, but if you start thinking about what the top of the league table might look like in 2-3 years' time, of some of the clubs that are starting to emerge as contenders, anything can happen. This will get replayed in about 3 years' time, but anything can happen. And I do think we are, you know, this thing of only 4 teams have ever won the Super League, I think feels like it's finally coming to an end, if not this year, then soon. St Helens, 126 points in 3 games. Now you can look at the opposition who have all league points this season, but they finally, I think, got that spine to click. They finally kind of worked out where everyone fits in. They've got that added sort of conundrum now of having to fit Jack Wellesby into that.
Yes, but exciting.
When you've got a player that good, you have to fit him in and he'll find a way. We talk about Leeds being a good chance for this. Well, St Helens, bearing in mind, it's not that long ago people were talking about Paul Wellens' job. Saints have absolutely bolted.
Well, they say, don't they? That saying, never write off the Saints. No, they are. They're coming good at the right time, and I think some of their better players are playing well as well. I think Tristan Saylor's really improved over the course of the season. The work that he's doing now, the points he's scoring, you know, the effort off the ball with his support plays being outstanding. Even Kyle Felt, who had maybe a little bit of a shaky start to the year, you know, the way he's carrying out a yardage, he's a yardage monster. He really is. But then he's also scoring tries. He's busting tackles. You know, Lomax is now back in and settled. You know, Darryl Clark's playing a lot better now too, and the 9 role. And like you said, just the pieces around them. Walmsley as well is still carrying strong and causing issues. There's a lot of positives around St Helens and the way they're going about their business. So you're right, their timing, their run really much right.
I actually think they're the most dangerous team in the comp at the moment, purely because normally the best defensive sides in the comp are the best teams. Well, Saints have conceded 38 points in 9 weeks. That's phenomenal. It's the best defensive record across the season Saints have ever had. And they're slowly getting their attacking order as well. Owen Dagnall, Harry Robertson, they've just come from nowhere. Like Saints always do, they find these young players, like you mentioned, you drop Jack Wellesby in there. I think the hardest thing for Paul Wellens now at the end of the year is managing all these good players and getting them to collectively play well in these big games. And if they do that, and they can actually improve from where they are now, I'd go as far as to say they're favourites.
There's a question for someone who's never played professional rugby league and kind of been in that sort of environment, but Paul Wellens, I think, despite some of the criticism around him, internally has always been quite highly rated as a coach. And then the added factor of Leigh Briers in there as well. When you take a young player, and I mean Jack Wellesby's still young, he's been around forever, but he's still young. Tristan Saylor's still young. Harry Robertson, George Whitby, Dagnall, those ones that you've brought through, are they more kind of? Will Leigh Briers find players like that easier to fit into the way that he wants them to attack than he would players that have been there for 10 years and done things a certain way?
Well, it's a lot easier to guide a younger player or bend him into the way that you want him to play. You know, when you're a bit older, you've got a sense of you want to play how you want to play. And so I think it's probably took Leigh a little bit longer to get hold of the attack. Let's not forget there's been a fair few injuries as well, and they've not had a consistent spine. But now they're looking something like Tristan Saylor has been phenomenal, hasn't he, over the last probably 2 months. the hardest thing now is making sure that Tristan Saylor's form stays the same, but they get Jack Welsby in. I don't know how they do it. They put him at 9 when Jack Welsby came on, and it worked. I'm not sure that works in a playoff game when it's brutal. But Paul Wellens will know, and Leigh Briers will know, and Eamon O'Carroll will know the best way to manage that side. But why they're defending like they are, they're giving themselves a massive chance. You know, we mentioned Warrington before, they're conceding over 20, 24 points every week. Well, your attack has to be pretty good to win. When you're conceding 10, 2-3 tries isn't that hard when you've got a man like Leigh Briers and Paul Wellens running your attack.
Moving on, obviously well documented that Salford versus Wakefield was postponed for player welfare issues, players not being available for Salford due to injuries and a million other different reasons, as we seem to find out. And the club have confirmed that this week's game will go ahead. Players are back from injury. They've got some players in on loan. They've also met with supporters for the first time, this ownership group, off the back of some protests at the weekend. Really big turnout actually from Salford fans at the stadium, despite that game being postponed. Beyond that, it seems very much as you were, and very much still a waiting game to see what happens in the bigger picture from a Salford perspective. Still talk of this bridging loan that we've been talking about for months. Still talk that funds are going to arrive, as we've been talking about for months. Beyond that, we don't really know what's going on, gents.
Well, we do.
Well,
nothing's going on.
Yeah, well,
nothing's going on, is it, Lewis? It's been the same for months. A new ownership group's come in. They've given no answers. They've not given any funds. And I feel sorry for Paul Rowley, Kurt Haggerty, all the players that are there, all the players that have left, all the fans, Paul King, Chris Irwin, all the people day to day running and trying to manage that club and trying to be, a voice for the people. It's almost an impossible job when it is. When's this money coming? It's coming Friday. Oh, it's not here. When's it coming? Oh, next Friday. It's almost laughable now that we're still actually thinking it's going to come.
Moving on. Before we look ahead to this weekend's action in the Betfred Super League, just a reminder, we announced last night we've got live rugby league from Betfred League One here on the Sportsman on Sunday. It's Derby Day, Swinton Lions against Rochdale Hornets, 2 o'clock kickoff from Hayward Road. Join us at 1:45 coverage starts. Big game between Swinton and Rochdale anyway, always is when they meet. Big game in terms of the league table, but Swinton have dedicated this game to Mickey Hyam, who joined their coaching staff earlier on in the year and of course recently diagnosed with cancer for a second time. £15 from every hospitality ticket sold for Sunday's game is going to his Just Giving Fund. I know there's loads of other fundraising bits planned around that game, so brilliant to see Swinton doing their bit. Mickey's son Harry playing for Swinton as well, so I'm sure it'll be an emotional one down there at the ground. So you can catch that here live on the Sportsman from 1:45 on Sunday. Gents, for all of the kind of negative, frustrating side of the game that we've just spoken about, if there's one thing rugby league does, it's show up for its own when you need them to, Kev.
Yeah, we're the best. We've got the best product, we've got the best people, and we've got the best arts, and that's why, Paul Wood is one of his best mates. Mickey actually does a bit of conditioning, a bit of coaching with Woody down at Swinton. Like you say, Harry, his eldest son plays down there. But across the board, Mickey Hyam is loved by everyone. Warrington did it, didn't they?
Yes.
With Leigh. Wigan did a bucket collection when they played against Hull KR. I'm sure Saints will do things as well. Everyone who's come across Mickey Hyam, even for a brief moment, loves the bloke because he's like everyone else. He's an honest, hard-working, fantastic human, and let's hope that the money raised can help him get a cure for this horrible disease.
Yeah, he's toughest spot on the planet, Hendo, but at times like this, you also see the other side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's not great news to hear, but as we said, the support shown by the rugby league community and family has been fantastic, and long may it continue. So, best wishes out there to Mickey and his family. Yes,
live on the Sportsman this Sunday, Swinton Lions against Rochdale should be an absolute belter from Betfred League One, and we'll have some more confirmation of live games coming up for you soon as well. Let's take a look then We're running out of rounds, aren't we, in the Betfred Super League, getting ever closer to the playoffs. We'll have a look at round 23, and I tell you what, the first course is an absolute belter, Hendo. Two of the in-form teams in the competition coming head-to-head in a game that doesn't need a huge amount of teeing up anyway. They will get stuck into each other, Leeds Rhinos and Hull KR, and for all of the plaudits we've just put on both of them, this feels like a very difficult game to call.
It is. It's another tough proposition for Hull Kingston Rovers. They're going to be challenged once again. And I was at Craven Park when Leeds got the job done on them. And again, that was a great contest between two high quality sides. So yeah, very much looking forward to this one. Again, it's a big challenge for the Rhinos too. They've got to now. For me, I think a result here at Headingley shows that they are genuine contenders. But obviously for Hull Kingston Rovers, it's making sure get another step towards achieving that league leadership. So plenty for both teams to play for. Which way it goes, wow, it's going to be a real tough one to call. But I think, you've got form players. I think Mikey Lewis did a tremendous job last week. I thought he was outstanding. He's up against Jake Connor. That is going to make for a great contest. There's going to be plenty of niggle, plenty of that going at it. It's going to be awesome.
There are a lot of head-to-heads. I mean, that one that Hendo's mentioned is probably the headline act, the blockbuster. But when you just look at those spines, those two sets of pivots going up against each other, I think it makes it a really exciting game. Lewis and Amor were excellent. We've spoken about the Croft, Miller, Jack Connor trio at Leeds. So I'm really excited to see how that plays out, kind of tactically. And
you throw Andy Ackers and Jez Litton in there, two fine English hookers. Yep. I think it'd be very similar to the last time they played at Headingley, and I think it was Mikey Lewis who scored the try and won the game. A couple of tries in the last few minutes. I think it'd be a really close one, but I'm actually going to back Leeds at this one. At home, I think they'll be ready. I think Hull KR, if there's anyone with niggles now, Willie Peters has earned the right to rest them. If anyone gets a bit of a knock in the game, he's earned the right to rest them. Well, Leeds don't have that luxury, and I think for that reason they're going to go after it. I think they'll build this up to be the biggest game of the season, and they'll get the job done.
On to Friday, Leigh versus Salford. We at least know that it's going to go ahead. I don't think we can really talk about this as a contest, Hendo. But from a Leigh perspective, I feel like this has probably come at the perfect time for them. Yeah,
well, they're coming off back-to-back losses, aren't they, Lewis? So this has come at the perfect time for them just to get back into sync and get their mojo back. Like I said, I don't think Salford are going to put up too much resistance. Like I said, a lot of young players, a lot of lone players are going to have to come together very, very quickly and try and do the best they can. But I think it's a real opportunity here for the Leopards to bounce back and like I said, just try and get a little bit of confidence back in their game as they head into the business end.
St Helens Hull, Kev. Another really interesting game, especially after the form that Hull FC found recently.
It's huge, and if Hull can turn Saints over, then we start looking at them like they've got the form at the right time. I can't see it. I think Saints will be too strong. I think Saints are going for that top two finish now. They're one win away from Wigan. The points difference suggests if they get that, they'll be more than comfortable to go above them. Wigan aren't red hot at the moment, so Saints have got an opportunity to get a home semi-final.
Small blood, don't they?
They do, and it's huge. And this sets up there's a Saints-Wigan game in a few weeks, I think, and that'll be an absolute whopper.
Yeah, but I think also Hull FC, I think they lost, I think it was reported Asiata's out now for the season with a hamstring injury. Will Price has done another injury which may keep him out for the season.
Well, Asiata was massive last week.
He was.
Massive.
So that for me this is where I feel like I think Hull FC still have enough in the tank to maybe make the six, but that's where I feel they're not going to probably be able to really challenge in that playoff series with a few of those key people missing, which they need.
On to Saturday, Catalans, Castleford's probably not going to be the headline act that it may have been a few years ago, but two sides are desperate for a win. I think it could throw up an entertaining game of rugby league, if nothing else, because you would think both of these teams will just go kitchen sink here. Yeah,
and there'll be a bit of nervousness about there's a bit of jeopardy. Whoever loses that game is really scratching their head. Look, if Castleford go to Catalans, Joel will be devastated. He's been given the job. He'll be expected probably for one of the first times to win and arguably win comfortably at home against Castor where they're going. But I listened to Chris Chester after the performance at the weekend and he didn't mince his words, he went after the players and he actually said they were pathetic. So if he's saying that publicly, internally, I'm not sure he's going to be any better. So I think he gets this team fired up. It'll go one or two ways, won't it, Hendo? When you go so hard on your team, they either respond or they go backwards. So we'll find out pretty soon.
Yep.
We'll move on to Wigan versus Wakefield, Hendo, and I think we've just sort of alluded to this one. All of a sudden, this is must-win territory for Wigan, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Talk about how important it is to get into the top two against a rested Wakefield team who've just had an unexpected week off. This is big for Wigan.
Yeah, I agree, and especially with the Warriors at the moment, they are inconsistent. They have been inconsistent over the last sort of 6, 7, 8 weeks. So, yes, I know they're hopeful that Bevan French is going to return sooner rather than later. But they can't just rely solely on him. Harry Smith has to pick his game up and get a bit more consistency there. Other players around have to raise as well and showcase what they're about. They need to get back on track. And I think this is a real opportunity for them this week because Wakefield aren't no mugs. They've really added value to the competition this season. If they're on form, they're a real threat. Yeah, but once again, they've been fairly inconsistent.
But they blew Wigan away, didn't they, on the reverse fixture?
They have done that.
At Wakefield, so they'll be confident.
And they've had that week off, which may allow them just to get over a few little niggles if there has been any. They should be going into this fresh, hungry, and they're chasing down that top 6 spot as well. So they'll be looking to try and chase down Hull FC. So they're going to come in at fired up. It's just how Wigan respond, and they need to respond with a good performance. They really, really do. But it's going to make for a tasty contest.
I feel like we're all sort of waiting for that end of season muscle memory Wigan mentality to kick in. It might happen, given they've just had another punch on the nose against Hull KR. You just feel like maybe the focus has narrowed again, and maybe there's going to come a point where you feel like they're going to blow someone away. I'm not saying it will be this weekend because, as Hendo says, Wakefield are absolutely no mugs, but I feel like at some point we're going to
agree, but I've been feeling like that for 6 weeks, maybe.
Yeah. I think they need to win this weekend. I really do. I think this is. I honestly believe this weekend's fixture, this could almost not define their season, but really.
Well, we said this about Catalans when Catalans went there and they won, and it just weren't enough. They need a performance. They've got to win the game, but they've got to perform defensively. The massive plus and confidence thing around this Wigan side is they're resilient and they have got such resolve at that club. But their attack, it's just stuttering. But at some point, I agree, it's going to click, and it doesn't really matter who it clicks against. They could cop for 30, 40 points.
Rounding off the weekend, Warrington heading to Huddersfield, and again, I think it's probably academic in terms of the playoff picture of this game. I don't think I'm being massively controversial by saying that, but as we've spoken about, Warrington wanted to finish this season on a high. Huddersfield will be very much feeling the same. They have had some progress throughout the year. They've done it tough. Hendo, I think this is one of those games that sometimes these kind of fixtures can throw up the best games because there's a little bit of devil-may-care to it.
There is, but again, I think there's no pressure on Huddersfield. Again, I think their season has floundered, as we know, but in recent weeks, we've seen them turn a slight corner and have a few improved performances, so to speak. Not necessarily always getting the results, but the performance has improved. It was disappointing for them in the nature that they got belted on the weekend, let's be honest, by St Helens at St Helens. So because they come off the back of back-to-back wins leading into that, I think they would have hoped to have not necessarily gone there with the expectation of winning, but at least performing a lot better. The fact that they were never ever in the contest really, says something about that. So, but they're coming up against the Warrington Wolves side that has been, as Kev's alluded to earlier in the chat, been very inconsistent this season. Again, there's clearly some shift in personnel. We've seen Toby King and Matt Duffy recently in the reserves. Will they come back in the fold? Will some more youngsters get an opportunity? So I don't see Warrington as a settled side. I think there's been some encouraging signs from George Williams and Mark Sneed at times, and they've played some good football at times in games. But for me, they are going to need a consistent performance if they're going to overcome a determined Huddersfield side. I think Huddersfield will sniff an opportunity here, and if they can perform well and they play with that freedom which we saw a few weeks ago with Flanagan and Rush together linking up, they can cause Warrington some problems. So, but I do think the pressure's on Warrington this week to go there, deliver a performance and get a result.
That game's interesting for different reasons. This round, I think, is fascinating, and we'll probably say this right now through to the end of the regular season. But I feel like this year, the way that things have panned out, I think we're looking at trying to fit 7 into 6 at this stage. How that 6 looks, I think there's a lot of different variations that could pan out between now and the end of the year. I think we know who's going to finish at the top. But again, much talk about the pros and cons of this playoff system. What that playoff system has given us for the next few weeks is anything from 2 to 6 can shift, and all of those positions have got kind of different levels of significance laced into them. It's a fascinating end to the year, I think.
Oh yeah, and the jostling for position is so important, because going away to Hull KR or being at home to a Wakefield or at home to it's a completely different scenario. So 4 teams can finish second.
Yeah.
That's how crucial it is that the form goes, and a lot of these teams are playing each other, so not only we're in a treat for the next 4 weeks, but when the playoffs come round, I honestly believe it's going to be the best playoff series we've ever seen, because genuinely every team that's in there will have a good bit of form and a genuine chance of getting to the grand final.
Well, just a final question before we wrap up, Hendo. We talk about the form and momentum and confidence and stuff like that. Is there a little bit of teams almost, look, you want to win every game, but there's an element of time in your run here, isn't there? The Saints have been so good for the last 3 months.
Yeah.
There's an element of, well, can they realistically keep that up? That's a challenge for them, isn't it? It's the same with Leeds.
Yeah.
Are Hull FC just starting to time their run with a few wins? I know injury problems might...
And is it a master plan from...
Yeah, exactly.
Is he holding Bevan French, Luke Thompson, and then go
been fit for weeks.
Yeah.
Well, they haven't, but exactly that, like, when do you start... If you know you're going to be in the 6, and I think probably 5 out of the 7 do, when do you start going, right, we're going to hit the accelerator here?
It's a great question, Lewis. It really is. I think for me personally, you want to try... Momentum's a big thing for me. You want to maintain consistency in performance, going into the playoffs, and you certainly want a good 2 or 3 week run leading into that if you can do that. So I think most coaches who are managing those top sides you've just mentioned there, Lewis, I think will want to be, certainly with 2 or 3 weeks to go before the players be sort of hitting their straps in and playing their best rugby league football. That's for certain. But again, I think as well, depending on where they finish, or if they've secured a certain position, it may also give them the luxury to rest 1 or 2 bodies to freshen them up, because I think Kev just mentioned there's going to be a number of fixtures over the next few weeks where these top teams are playing each other. We're seeing that with Leeds and Hull KR this week. Hull KR faced Wigan last week, so there's going to be some periods where it's really difficult to maintain that level of performance over the space of the next sort of 2 months. So you may see some players getting rested or shifted, and also we've got to consider some of this loading management stuff that we have this year as well that the coaches have got to think about. So plenty to contend with, but I think certainly most teams will want to be playing at their best 2 to 3 weeks leading into it.
Well, I'm starting my run now. I think we've got a really, really good end to the season, and this week especially throws up some really good matchups. Don't forget, live rugby league here on the Sportsman on Sunday from Betfred League One. A bit of a local derby for you as the Swinton Lions take on the Rochdale Hornets. Gents, pleasure as ever to have you in with us. Every week throws up something a little bit different. I'm sure this week will do exactly the same as we get ever closer to playoffs and Old Trafford. Join us on Sunday, and of course we will be back next week with more from The Last Tackle.
This is my time.